So when people ask me about my story, they say, don't you wish you had a normal life? Don't you wish you had parents and grew up in the middle class? I'm like, that point in my life could have saved my life. And so most people don't get that. I'm like, having all of that happen for me could have saved my life, because had I continued doing what I was doing, hanging out with the people I was hanging out with, I probably would have continued down that road and could have wound up dead or in jail anyway.
The whole concept for move is make a difference. To offer up your time, talent, and gifts. There's victory in the small things, and E, to encourage others. And so I started to move.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining the Move podcast. I'm your host, Scotty Carlisle, and today we have a guest that he's got quite the past. And that being said, he's also got quite the future. Right now, he's devoted his time to helping people in a lot of different situations and going through their struggles and really trying to find themselves. And be real, don't be fake. And today there's a lot of problems with self-image and just image altogether. And so I want to introduce one of my personal friends that we've known each other for a while now in different contexts. And without further ado, Chris Rausch, Christopher. I like to call you Chris because it's faster and easier for me to say, but your name's Christopher, so I can appreciate that too.
Either one. It's honestly Christopher. It's just, Mr. Kickass.
Hey, even better.
No. I have a story about that now.
So could you introduce yourself, Chris?
Absolutely. I am Christopher Rausch. I am known as the No Excuses Coach, and I love helping people overcome their self-created crap without the self-help fluffy bullshit. There's my introduction.
So what do you mean by self-help fluffy bullshit?
That is a very interesting question, Scott. I've been on a journey for the last 3 or 4 years, and I could probably almost say that I need to change that tagline, because the self-help fluffy bullshit for me before used to be the yoga, the meditation, the breath work we were just talking about, and kind of like, if you want to achieve something, you have to visualize it in your mind and sit Indian style and do all that other stuff. Like when The Secret came out, I was like, if you just wish for it, it happens. Well, for me, that pissed me off. It was like, no, if you just wish for something, it's not going to happen. You have to actually get off your butt and go do it. So, but now seeing the self-help fluffy bullshit and seeing how yoga, meditation, and all those different aspects that I was not aware of or not educated on, they really do impact your life. So now I think the fluffy bullshit are the people in the personal development industry who are liars and cheats and scams that are out there saying they want to help people, but all they care about is how much money they can make from an audience. And so that's the fluffy bullshit that I want to get away from, and that's why I'm just being me.
Okay, so you know what? I have seen, I don't know how long that you've been pushing this, but maybe a couple years, and I've seen a lot of personal growth just from your Facebook posts and the conversations that you've had and where you're going. So I really think that you're onto something, and I'm really happy that you took the time to come here to talk to me. And what I wanted to do with that is kind of uncover your story of where you came from and why it is you do what you do. Why do you give a shit? Why do you care about helping others? What trials and tribulations have you been through to give you the perspective that you have?
How much time you got? Trials and tribulations.
Enough.
Trials and tribulations. There's so many different places to start. I look at, I was just telling somebody the other day, they asked me, when was a pivotal point in your life where you had to really change how you thought about yourself? And it was back in somewhere 1985, 86, 80, I'm bad at dates. I was about 16, 17 years old. And I came walking in, we were staying at this broken down motel. And I came walking in and the guy said, "Hey, do you want to buy a carton of cigarettes?" And he said, "Oh, you want to buy a carton of cigarettes for $5?" And I said, "What you got?" And he whips out a carton of Marlboro Reds. And I said, "Oh man, I don't smoke those. I smoke Cools." And he was a black guy. And he's like, "What do you mean you don't smoke Marlboro Reds? All you white people smoke Marlboro Reds." And I was like, "No, I actually smoke Cools. I actually smoke menthols." And they're, "Oh, really? Are you making fun of me because I'm black?" I said, "I don't care what color you are. I grew up in Inglewood where I was the only white kid on my street. I don't care what the color of skin is. I care about the fucking cigarettes, and I don't smoke those." 30 seconds later, I had a gun to my head. 30 seconds later, I had cold steel pressed to my forehead, thinking I was joking him, thinking I was punking him, thinking I was making fun of him because he was black. And stereotypically at that point, I don't know if this is still true today, but stereotypically at that point, blacks smoked menthols and us tough white guys smoked Marlboros or Winstons or Salems or some bullshit like that, whatever the commercial said. And I said, dude, and I went to go, that's what it was. I went to go reach for my back pocket because my cigarettes were in my back pocket. I went to go reach, and that's when I literally went like this. I said, dude, I'll show you. And I went like this, and then it was like this, and I was like, oh, we have a conversation shift here. You seem to really want me to buy your cigarettes. And it was right out in the motel. I mean, this place shouldn't even been allowed to run. This is how bad this place was. And then fortunately, because I'm a good person, even at the age of 16, 17 years old, right around then, this other guy, my friend Keith, came walking out, and he's a black guy. He's like, no, him and his moms are cool. And I left. I literally sit there, and he still had the thing to my head, and I said, if you're going to pull the fucking trigger, pull it. And at that point in my life, I had already tried committing suicide twice. Unfortunately, I sucked at it. I was desperate. I didn't give a shit. I'm like, if this is what you're going to do, then do it. And at that point, I was so fed up with doing what everybody else wanted me to do and so tired of having to explain myself and so tired of being misunderstood. I didn't care anymore. That was my breaking point. I was like, pull the trigger. And I fully expected to hear a click, and that was going to be it. And then fortunately, he's like, man. And I pulled the cigarettes out. And I'm like, see? I said, no, if you don't mind me, this is a little stressful. I'm going to have a cigarette. And I wound up, befriending him and everything. But at that point in my life, I realized that everything I had been through and experienced up until that point really was a pivotal point for me to sit there and say, okay, listen, you're going to get out of the situation in one of a couple of ways. In a pine box, in jail, or you're going to have to make the determination that you are worth more than the situation you're in and have to bust your ass to get out of that and make some really, really, really hard decisions. And so I made those decisions, and that's really what started me to be on the path that I'm on today.
So leading up to that point, you said you almost committed suicide, or you tried to commit suicide a couple times and you sucked at it. What about your life, or what about the problems that you were having compelled you to try to commit suicide?
Well, let's step back to, the winter of 69, February 69, when I was born. Long time ago, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Back when cell phones didn't exist, if you could believe that. No, back in 69, I was born in Inglewood to a mother with various psychological disorders, chemical dependencies, an affiliation for the men, if you know what I mean. So I was born into a family of a sister that was from another dad. My biological father was nowhere to be seen. He was actually, I found out later, married and had a family of his own, hence the promiscuousness. So in those first 5 years of my life were absolutely just chaotic. And my memory started around 4 or 5. And at that point, I just remember being on buses in Los Angeles. I remember not being a kid. I remember not playing. I remember, always having to go somewhere with my mom or being left with my sister. And it wasn't until the fact that in that neighborhood, I started getting picked on, because when I would go out and ride my big wheel, I was the only white kid in a black neighborhood. So they would pick on me. And I didn't understand. I'm like, when we're kids, we don't really see that. But I could see that the nature of maybe the parents, they saw that white people were bad because of everything that was going on. So I understand that. So fortunately, we were able to get out of that situation. My mom moved us to Anaheim in Orange County. And then I thought I was going to have an average life. My mom I met a guy, and he had a son, so we're moving to Orange County. We're going to have a house, and I thought, my life is finally going to be great. I'm going to finally have a family, and I was going to start school. Because I started school in Inglewood, and it wasn't a good thing. I was pulled out of school within the second day because it was just not right for a white kid to be in that many. It wasn't cool. But what's funny is the story changes down the road. So when I got there, that's when the physical abuse. That's when the physical abuse started. That's when I saw my mom's boyfriend beating her beating him, and that's when I started getting the physical beatings. My sister started getting the physical beatings. She left at the age of 16 and decided to go live with her dad because her dad was well off and her dad was normal. This lends itself into the point of the story later. So everything was fine, and she just said, I can't take mom anymore. I had to raise you when I was 7 years old, and blah, 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 victim. And then she bolted. After her husband bolted, they wound up getting married. So that was just me and my mom. And at the age of 13, after she spent the last $5,000 she had on a cat that was dying of leukemia, we lost our house. So literally at the age of 13, halfway through the 7th grade, I had to drop out and leave that house. And through that journey of being homeless for the next 4 years, part of that journey involved being at that motel. It involved sleeping in the car with 18 cats and 2 dogs. That is no lie. My mom was a cat person. She had over 30 cats and 4 dogs in the house, but the sheriff was going to show up at 6 o'clock that night if we weren't out, and that's as many cats as she could get out of the house into the station wagon before the cops showed up, because she was not going to give up the cats. She was not. We could have. My grandfather offered to get us a house, but the contingency was that you weren't going to have 30 cats and 4 dogs. She stood her ground and says, "No, this is what we're going to do. This is what I'm about." And for the next 4 years, we went on that homeless journey in the car and various motels. She was raped one time when I was 14 or 15. Had to deal with that. She actually went to court and fought the guy, and ultimately he got off. Later on, he actually raped somebody else and was convicted of attempted murder. Peter, I can't remember his name now. So all throughout that battle, throughout all those times of digging in trash cans, seeing my mom drinking, the hierarchy in the family was the cats got taken care of, the dogs got taken care of, mom got cigarettes, and then there was food. So during those times, I could still look at a sleeve of crackers and think, wow, that's dinner, because it was so cheap. And so I would just eat crackers and drink water and get filled up, because that was the hierarchy. So, and through all of that, lost my identity, lost who I was, obviously a teenager going through hormone changes, really didn't fit in with anybody. And up until that point also, in addition to the physical abuse at the house, I was bullied both on my block and at school. Even in elementary school, I was bullied, I was picked on. There was a situation one time where I really wanted to fit in, and the kids at the elementary playground had said, "Hey, we're going to play baseball." And so I was scared to go stand in the group of guys, because they were all like boys. And I said, "Oh, I want to play too." I still remember this. And they're like, "What position do you play?" And I said, "I play batter." I said, "I play batter." Because I'd watched baseball, but I really didn't understand it, because I didn't have a dad that would teach me about it. And the kids erupted in laughter. I felt bad. Nobody picked me for their team. And I was just like, okay, another outsider. So it all culminated there at the motel one night, where I was just frustrated. My mom was playing pseudo informant to the Anaheim Police Department about a drug dealer that was in the motel. And then she was also working for said drug dealer on the side. My mom, like I said, various psychological disorders. Meanwhile, the kid is working at Carl's Jr., working 2 telemarketing jobs, or working at a temp agency, working at Carl's Jr., or working 3 temp jobs, or working, it was just crazy. I was just busting my ass, and she wasn't doing anything. And ultimately, one night, I was so mad, I drank. I wasn't really drinking at that time. I drank, and I smoked a bunch of pot, and I got in her station wagon that she loved so much. And I decided I was going to go run that car and myself into a brick wall and go as fast as I could and see what happens. And God, universe, whatever you want to call it, I got on the freeway and I just started hauling ass. I was on the 5 freeway. I went down the 5 freeway. I got off. I went up on the 22 freeway, drunk and high, and not supposed to be driving a 5,000-pound vehicle, with the intention of finding a solid surface where I could just run right into. And of course, if you're on a freeway, you're not going to find any walls. I wasn't that smart. So I drove the 22 freeway to the 405 freeway, to the 605 freeway, back to the 5 freeway, and back. And ultimately, through that point, I sobered up a little bit and was like, do I really want to do this? You know, I didn't know anything. I just knew people had to kill themselves, and they were done with their pain. They were done with their anger. They were done with everything else. I'm like, if I just do this, that's going to teach her a lesson. Then maybe she'll finally go, oh shit, I forgot. I'm supposed to love my son. I'm supposed to take care of my son. Wound up driving back to the motel. She didn't even know I was gone. Went back up to the room, went to sleep, woke up the next day. And another time I tried to take a bunch of Advil. I took like half a bottle of Advil, probably 20 of them or something like that. Didn't know that it wouldn't do anything, but I thought, well, if you're supposed to take 1, then 20 will kill me. I just didn't have a headache for another 15 years. It was great. So fortunately, like I said, I sucked at it. And all of that led up to that moment where I finally had to make that decision, which was one of the toughest decisions I had to make. But we all have to make tough decisions in our life to get us where we want to go, and not where we've always been.
So what was the process, or how did it look as you separated yourself from your mom? Because you were still a young person, right? You were still, I mean, it's not like you... So I guess you did have a job, right? So at what age, and then how did it work for you to finally take that step away from that environment?
I was 17 years old, and it was literally probably a couple of weeks after that incident with the gun, and my mom was yelling at me, and part-time I stayed in somebody else's room. Her room only had one bed, and that's another story. And then this other guy that I kind of took care of, he had muscular dystrophy, so he had an extra bed. So because I took care of him, I got to sleep in the other bed. And then all of a sudden he started getting weirded out and started having people over. So it was just like I had nowhere to go. I didn't fit in anywhere. I really couldn't stay in the room anymore. And then me and a buddy of mine that lived in the motel I became friends with, we both were working a telemarketing job, which was out of a person's apartment in Huntington Beach, which sounds kind of creepy. We're telemarketing out of somebody's apartment. What kind of telemarketing are you doing there, Chris? We were setting roofing contractor appointments. He had one bedroom all set aside for a little office, a little makeshift call center, and we made decent money at it. If we got a roofing contractor appointment, that's all we needed. We got like $300. And so we were just calling businesses all day long, setting these appointments. As long as he could show up to the appointment, then we got $300. And we show up to work one day, and he's like, and I remember his name is Norman Dodd. He was a nice gentleman. He was a weird looking gentleman, but he was nice. Retrospect, it probably wasn't the smartest thing for a 17-year-old boy to be going to a guy's apartment that looked like that, but he wound up being a really nice guy. And we go to work one day, and he's like, "Oh, boys," and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on, Norm?" And he's like, "Well, I got some bad news and I got some good news." And I look at him flat in the face. I said, "I've had enough bad news to last a lifetime." I said, "Really? Bad news? What kind of bad news could you have about this?" And he said, "Well, let me tell you the good news." And I was like, "All right, tell us the good news." He says, "Well," and this is the funny part. Now I actually think about it. I'm going to tell you the good news. I'm going to leave you my apartment. I'm going to leave you my apartment with the down payment, the deposit, first and last and all that other stuff, because he knew Robert and I were trying to get out of that place. He knew where we lived. He knew our story.
Oh, wow.
So he's like, I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. How would you," he goes, "Yeah, now the bad news." He goes, "I'm moving the operations back to Texas." He was from Texas. We're like, wait, what just happened? We just lost our jobs and gained an apartment? Really? What? And it was a really nice apartment. It's Huntington Beach in Edinger, beautiful. I mean, workout facility. I mean, to me, living in that motel, which literally was finally condemned and the 5 freeway actually drives over it now, to even think that I could live in this nice of a place was no. Then we both looked at each other like giddy little schoolgirls. Like, "Oh my God, we could do this. We could do this. We could get your brother. We could get somebody else. We could do it." It was like the rent was like $850, which is I imagine that place is probably like $3,000 a month by now.
My goodness. Yeah.
And we're like, and then I was like, "Oh yeah, I got a mom back there." And so when I was driving home, I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, you know what? This is a pretty amazing experience. This is a pretty amazing opportunity. And at that point, I didn't realize that there's certain junctures in your life that you get a chance to like break out of the situation you're in. There are signs and things that show up in our lives that we can either ignore or go after. And this was a sign. This was a dead sign. He was like, "Here's your spot. All you have to do is pay $850 a month." We could do that with 4 people. And so thinking about it, I'm like, okay, how am I going to tell my mom about this? Maybe she'll let me, maybe I could do a part-time. I was just trying to figure out every possible way I could still do it and kind of inch my way out of the situation, make it softer. Right. And so, I think it was a day or so later, because I was petrified to tell my mom. And I finally she said something, she yelled at me. And I said, "Well, listen," I said, "I think I'm going to be going." And she's like, "You're not?" And I'm like, "What?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I'm kind of done with this. I said, "Actually, Robert and I got offered to take over the apartment in Huntington Beach. And, what do you think about that?" And she goes, "You want to know what I think about that?" And I thought maybe, just maybe, she was going to say, "You know what? I fucked you up enough. I've put you through so much stuff in your life that I have screwed you up so bad that you should go do this." I actually really thought that. I thought she's crazy enough just to go, "You know what? You have my blessing." But no. She cumulatively called me every name in the book that she had ever called me, with heightened anger. And and then when I went to go leave, I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna leave right now." She called the cops and tried to have me arrested for taking my own car. I heard her on the phone. She goes, "My son's stealing my car." And I'm like, "It's actually my girlfriend's parents' car."
Oh, God.
But they let me, right? So yeah, it was pretty insane. And God is my witness, I wound up going back there every single night to help her. I wound up giving her money. It was crazy. Asked my girlfriend, who became my first wife. I forget about this stuff, but every once in a while we'll chat, and she goes, "Do you remember those days?" I'm like, "No, not really," because that point I was just from like 17 until 30. I was just a beast about accomplishing things and just taking advantage of every opportunity I had. I went from being like, "Huh? What do I do now? Oh, can I do this?" to, "No, I've got to take responsibility and control of my life. Otherwise, I'm going to wind up dead or in jail, or a drug addict or an alcoholic or something like that." She wound up getting stronger progressively because You have to. Codependency, I didn't know anything about codependency. I didn't realize that as long as he's doing everything, I can go off and play I Spy and informant to the cops and all this other stuff. I don't have to get a job. I could just sweep the grounds and get, $20 off the rent every week, the week rent. But yeah, that was the breakout moment for me to do that. She got stronger, I got stronger, and then the story changed from there for a while, and then the story got dark again, and yeah, it's been a crazy journey.
What does it look like right now? Do you have a relationship with her? Do you talk to her?
In spirit.
Oh, she passed?
Yeah, she passed, let me see, 2021. Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine. Actually, almost 10 years ago. It was 2011. It's crazy how fast that time went. And I was there and I held her hand. Through everything we went through, I wound up, once I left the motel, once I distanced myself from her, I was always there with her and helping her. But progressively, I started getting around the right people. And one of those people was my girlfriend. And at the point where our relationship started getting serious, she's like, my parents want to meet you. And at that time, I had long hair, like hair in my face, beard, smoked cigarettes, swore like crazy. I had less of a filter than I have now because I was a lot like my mom, because I had spent 17 years of my life seeing as that, okay, that's your quote unquote role model, but I knew that wasn't my role model. And so once I met her parents, that introduced me to a whole new world of, oh, wow, I'm different. I'm different because I had been so kind of secluded in my life that I didn't see. I mean, I knew people were rich and everything, but I went over to their house for the first time on acid, by the way, but that's another story. Yeah, it was the day out. It was the day after, but anyways, and I walk into their house and I was just like, like a model home. Everything was in its place. Everything was clean. There wasn't cats running around. It smelled nice. And I'd been in nice homes before, but I was like, everything I had been through for the last 4 or 5 years, the things I had to endure, going to the bathroom in a bucket in somebody's garage for a while I slept in their van in their driveway. The story is deep. I'm writing that book right now.
I love it.
It's a pain in the butt to write that book because you have to go back and revisit everything in detail. And I'm kind of like, the past is the past. Let's get on with it. So now I have to go back and open up those boxes and kind of go, okay. And I'm doing that in the book part from a couple of different perspectives. But anyway, I met this guy. I was scared shitless. Like, he's going to take one look at me and go, get away from my daughter. She was like higher upper middle class, popular, was in high school at the time, had all the surfer, clean cut friends. I mean, totally Valley Girl. Did you ever see Valley Girl, Nick Cage?
I'm sure I have, but I suck with movies, so.
Yeah, so do I. So do I. But Nick Cage was on the wrong side of the tracks. He was the punk rocker and she was the, the Valley Girl and everything. But he wound up looking in me and not at me. He wound up looking in me and not at me. And he started mentoring me. He was like, and I didn't want to tell him my story. I'm like, I don't want to tell your parents what I've been through in the last 4 years. Are you crazy? What? So I'll talk to my dad. Talk to my dad. He's cool. And so I just started talking to him, telling him about what was up. And he just started mentoring me. He's like, have you ever thought about going back to school? And at that point, I was probably 18, still smoking cigarettes. And I'm like, you want me to go back to school? You don't know the real world, dude. You don't know the real world. No. When I went to continuation, so he tells me to go to get my GED. I'm like, what the heck's a GED? He goes, General Equivalency Diploma. I'm like, what is that? I said, I'm not going to go back to school. There's no way. And what's funny is in the 7th grade, this is another part of the story, up until the 7th grade, I was bullied because I was a small kid. But as I started becoming a teenager, I started getting bigger. And then all of a sudden I went from being bullied to being the bully.
Right.
Yeah, so I started kicking people's ass in junior high school. So I started smoking pot, skipping classes. So when people ask me about my story, they say, don't you wish you had a normal life? Don't you wish you had parents and grew up in the middle class? I'm like, that point in my life could have saved my life. And so most people don't get that. I'm like, having all of that happen for me could have saved my life, because had she had the rent, had she found another boyfriend, had I continued doing what I was doing, hanging out with the people I was hanging out with, I probably would have continued down that road and could have wound up dead or in jail anyway, or a drug addict. So I look at it, this was like a hard shock. This was a hard stop. Like, okay, listen, here's your life. You think your life's fucked up now? Ladies and gentlemen, wait, there's more. You just signed up for the bonus package. You're going to live in the backseat of a 1969 station wagon with 18 cats and 2 dogs. Yes, you scored the bonus points. And there's so many stories within that. But yes, I wound up getting my GED because I was like, okay, if I want to keep dating this nice girl, I better do what this guy says. So I went to Wintersburg Continuation School in Huntington Beach, and I went in there and I'm like, GED? Yeah, you're in the right place. Okay. Well, okay, where'd you go to school at? Brookhurst Junior High. Okay, we're going to have to send for your transcripts. And I'm thinking, they're going to come back and go, yeah, you need to go back to school. You need to go, like, you missed, because I wasn't good in school anyway. So I'm like, yeah, this is going to be a joke. And I already set myself, and I think that's where I started changing my expectations about things, like not being, oh, I'm going to go back to school. I was like, yeah, right. And sure enough, they came back and they said, well, you actually really tested well. And I think I needed to make up history or something else. It was like 2 categories or 2 classes. And I think I did it for 3 months. So I got kicked off the grounds of continuation school because I was smoking. That's what I was going to tell you before. So I was like, you really want me to go back to school? Yeah, it was funny. They told me I had to leave because I was smoking on the grounds waiting for the class to start. And the guy comes over and he goes, you can't be on the ground smoking. And I said, well, I am. I am. I smoke. That's how I was. I was like totally unfiltered. He's like, okay, well, you have to leave the grounds to smoke your cigarette. So literally while I was watching me, I walked to the edge of the grounds, put my toes right at the edge of the grass. I went, I blew my smoke straight out.
You little shithead.
Yeah, but no, I mean, that was my first awakening that I wasn't stupid. Because I've been told I was stupid all my life. I was told to be seen and not heard. I was told to shut up, Chris, and just do what I tell you. So many times I thought that was my name. That I'm stupid. And so once I did that, I was like, maybe I'm not that stupid. And so I went back and I showed Bill hey, I did it. You happy? You proud? Now I'm going to go back and get your daughter. You know? He's like, now, Chris, thought about college. I'm like, college, dude, I work 2 jobs right now. I live with 4 guys in a 2-bedroom apartment. What? Really? Yeah, you can just take one college, go to Golden West, go to the community college, just take 1 class. I'm like, Went back and told all my friends, I'm like, I might be going to college. Really? You're good, Mr. Smarty Pants? Oh, you're going to go be better than all the rest of us? I was like, well, that's weird. When you tell your friends something, don't your friends supposed to be kind of happy for you? Yeah. I remember that vividly. Like, I said, well, and I kind of joked around. I'm like, well, if I want to keep dating this girl, I'm going to do what this guy says because he has a nice house. He's happy. He's got money. He's
somebody you can learn from.
Yeah. Maybe this is the route. Maybe what we're doing over here, jacking each other off, is not literally, please, but over here is. I just got a visual. I'm a visual person. I was like, no, that was a bad thing to say.
Damn it, imagination, stop it.
Yes. No. So I wound up going back to those guys and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to do this, and all of a sudden I was on the outside, and for those, I want to say it was a year and a half. Literally, I finally started finding a tribe. I finally started finding a groove. It was heavy metal. It was the height of 80s, glam metal, Motley Crue, Poison, Bon Jovi. My hair was long, hung around with all these people. I was accepted. I finally fit in somewhere. I had a family. And for them to all of a sudden start kicking me out of that family because I wanted to better myself, I didn't understand. I'm like, does everybody just want to be miserable and screwed up in life? Is this what this world is all about? This guy seems to have it figured out. Maybe I should listen to him more. And so I started listening to Bill more and everybody else less. And so I went to school and I remember it. I walked up to the administration's office at Golden West Community College and I walked in the door and I was scared to death that I was at college. Like literally, they're gonna go, really? No, you run along right now. You're an idiot. And I said, hi, I'm here to register for school. And she says, okay, let's get things started. And we went through the catalog. What do you want to do? And I'm like, I think business. And so my first class was an interpersonal communications class. And I thank the universe, God, everybody for that being my first class because I learned so much about people, the communication process, listening versus hearing, speaking versus talking, choosing your words carefully. But most importantly, I learned how to listen and paraphrase, like seek to understand, to make sure that we really understand the communication message because we're not really taught that. And so it was an amazing class, and it really set me on a path for communicating, listening, and understanding people because I'd always been fascinated by people. And with Bill and everything else, I was fascinated by this new direction in my life. So, and as I started doing more of that, of course, my friends, stopped being my friends. I stopped. The last crazy thing I did was an 8-ball of Coke with a bunch of my friends and my girlfriend at the time, the same person. I had my own bedroom and they slept 2 in one bedroom and then one guy slept on the couch and that's how we were able to make it. So I had my own casita there with my own little mini fridge and all that other stuff. And I came home from work one day and there was, of all things, toothpaste in my keyhole. So I'm like, you really going to stop me from getting into my room with toothpaste? Yeah, because I went like this. I'm like, it was still wet or whatever. I'm like,
I don't get it.
Yeah. Well, they were trying to prevent me from getting in my room, but they were stupid. So literally, this is the truth. So this is the truth. So one door was right here, and the other door was right here. It was like a little hallway, and then there was a bathroom. So they tried to attempt me to not for me not getting in my room. So I literally, in one fell swoop, the other door was closed, Robert's door was closed. I literally busted it off the hinges, kicked the thing wide open, and like, really? Which one of you guys wants to go? Really? Which one of you guys wants to lose your life today? What bullshit? I'm just trying to better myself. I'm not doing drugs anymore. I'm like really trying to get better. And you guys are being dicks about it. So at that point, and that was the other thing, is that night when we were doing the 8-ball, I thought everybody did drugs. Because everybody we're hanging out with did drugs. And then all of a sudden, Tammy comes in the room. She's like, I don't feel right. I said, what's wrong? She goes, I just feel real amped and just kind of jittery. And da-da-da. I'm like, haven't you done this before? She goes, no, this is my first time. I'm like, oh, fuck me. Jesus Christ, her dad's going to kill me. And it was just like all of this whirlwind again. Like the same thing in the motel. It was like all this whirlwind. This situation right now is not conducive to me becoming the person I need to become in my life. And that's an awareness. That's an awareness we all need to have about we're in a situation. We know that it's not working for us, but we sit there and hope, wish, and pray that someday it'll change. And it drives me absolutely crazy. So at that point, my girlfriend says, what do you think about getting an apartment together? Wow, this is getting serious. Apartment together. What's your dad going to say about that? So yeah, we wound up getting an apartment together. And I told my friends, I said, adios. And I was like, we're taking our relationship serious. And again. Oh, blah, blah, blah. You're leaving all us guys for a girl. You're leaving us for some, yeah. And I'm like, I'm leaving to go be happy. We should all try to do that. You guys are all miserable. We go to the store, 5 of us, and we put a couple of dollars in together to find stuff to make for food every night. That's not the way I want to live. I've lived like that most of my life.
Yeah,
macaroni and cheese and hot dogs and stuff like that. So, yeah, it's been an amazing journey, and I wouldn't trade any of it for a minute.
So one of the interesting things that I see again and again and again and again and again is that we all have stories and we all have choices, not of just what to do, but what to reflect on. Somebody was talking about their brother and themselves. They used to get abused by their dad. The dad would kick their ass. And the one brother joins the military and ends up being special forces and then ends up being, cream of the crop. And he was tough. And for me, it was a real insightful thing because I was like, I told the guy, I was like, well, you did get abused, but it was actually training, because had he not got his ass kicked, he wouldn't be an ass kicker. Right. Mm-hmm. And that's the truth. Yeah. Because we adapt and we grow strong because of our adversities, not in spite of them, because of them. And we have the choice to look back and reflect on what it is that we're thankful for and what it is that we want to move forward with, exactly like what you've done with your life. And so it's really good. I didn't know all that, dude. I just liked you because you're in your face, and I respect that kind of attitude because I appreciate that. I don't like people that beat around the bush. Sometimes I do, and sometimes I don't. Most of the time I try not to, because I believe that when I beat around the bush, it takes away the value of the situation and what I can offer. If you're straightforward, you look people in the eye, and you mean what you say, yes, and you say what you mean, then you will make that situation better. And so right now, I'm just curious. Do you ever have situations where you reflect and it still hits you in the feelers? Do you still have situations that, like you mentioned, you're writing a book right now, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to revisit old wounds. And what is your process in order to deal with that, if you do have one? Or that's a great question. That's a great question. I didn't know you didn't know all that. Because I thought I had said it in some of the competitions, but... Right, but just like movies, you hear things and forget. The process for that is a great question, because that's been the most challenging part of the healing journey is forgiveness and empathy. And that's something that we do in my group coaching program, and that's something I do a lot in my coaching now. I know coaching is not supposed to be therapy, but I'm a hybrid of being able to figure out. Essentially what I tell people is that I have to change your perspective about your past, present, and your future so that you can be successful and have that unstoppable confidence, because our perspective is everything. And most people are looking for a perspective shift of like, oh, I want an overnight sensational change. But I just get people like, can you just look at it a little bit differently? So in that process, I was very angry with my mom.
I mean, we literally she won the lottery while we were homeless. $5,000. She bought a scratcher, won $5,000. Not making it up. God could strike me right now. Yep, see, I was telling the truth. No, and it was amazing. I mean, we got to buy clothes and we got to eat out and stuff like that. But Mom, we could get an apartment. And I remember riding my bicycle when I was collecting cans, because that's part of what I did too, is collect cans of newspapers every day in between jobs, to just everything we could do to bring everything I could do to bring money in, pretty much. I mean, she collected cans of newspapers too. But yeah, I mean, I was angry. I was very, very angry and bitter. And then I would tell her, Mom, grow up. You need to act like an adult. And she would always say, I'm 4 years old. I'm 4 years old. I'm like, what do you mean you're 4 years old? You're 40. What's this bullshit about you're 4? What? And that would piss me off. I'm like, Take responsibility for your life, woman. You had a kid. You're supposed to do for that kid. That's what you're supposed to do. You're not. And so, yeah, it was crazy. And I found that everybody else who was miserable around me had the same situation. They were angry at their parents. They were angry at something in their life. They blamed something in their life for why they were who they were. And I was like, I don't want to blame. I want to learn. I want to grow. Because that's when I was watching those successful people. I'm like, what did they do? They had to be able to process these emotions. So I started researching and understanding forgiveness and empathy. And I started, and then I remembered, I'm like, and something I say often now is like, if I walked in Scotty's shoes, if I had been through everything that you've been through in your life, Scott, might I think like you? Yes, absolutely. That's why I have arguments and conversations with people today. Like, why are these people like this? And why are those people like this? I'm like, simply, if you walked in their shoes, no, I wouldn't do that. I have a brain, but no, seriously, if you grew up in the conditioning process that all these little boys and girls did from the ages 0 to 5, 0 to 7, depending on when you want to look at the child psychology studies, that's when our personality is formed. That's when our beliefs are formed. That's when we go set out in the world and we find the subconscious validation for what it is that we supposedly believe, and that just perpetuates that positive cycle or that vicious cycle. So I had to get in the mind of my mom, and I had to sit there and really say, okay, how can I see everything that we've been through her lens? Not my lens, not as a victim, not as somebody who's pissed off and mad, but how can I see it from her perspective? Because she would say, I did the best I could with what I had. I'm like, that's bullshit. That's bullshit. No, you had 7,000 people telling you, take care of your son and ditch the cats. Put your son back in school. Don't screw up your son. You made a responsibility to have this kid. But she didn't do that. So I had to crawl into her mind and go, okay. And then it dawned on me. I'm like, 4 years old. And this took years. This was not an overnight thing. This was quite a number of years, a little bit of therapy in between. And I'm like, 4 years old. Why is that? And that's when I started studying child psychology and realizing that's the person we become. Like, her parents split when she was 4. Her dad moved out and left her with her psychotic mother. Oh, she had a psychotic mother too. She told me about a time that she accidentally left the keys inside the house, and her mom, my grandmother, who I did not like, no, I can tell you about that last phone conversation if you want. Didn't end pretty. I wished her well, and I never said another word to her. But she had left the keys inside the house, and when she got outside, she told me, her mother said, do you have the keys? And she said, yeah, and she forgot, and she locked the door, and she didn't have the keys. And so when they went to go get back inside, the keys were inside, and said, so they busted a window to get back inside, and her mom was like being all nice to her, like, oh, you're not in trouble. And as soon as she got inside, she held her hands over the stove to make her never forget to leave the keys in there, because now they have to replace a little pane window on the door.
Oh, man.
So I was like, oh. And what was really crazy about her situation is that my grandmother did without so my mother could have. So it's almost like my mom said this too, in retrospect, it actually comes to me right now, so I should probably remember this. In retrospect, my mom really did say, she goes, I want you to have what I didn't have. So I got to go outside and play, and I got to go out and do things. I think the majority of that was so that she could live her own life and do it. She didn't want to be tackled down with a kid. We didn't hardly ever play at all. But my grandmother gave her everything, like gave her the nicer food. My grandmother ate nothing. My mom always had vegetables and meat, and everything was about studying and learning. So my mom became very smart. So by the age of 16, she graduated high school, and she started going to University of Santa Barbara. I always thought that was a lie, because my mom made up lies all day long. Oh, I was a race car driver. I was a model. I was this. I was that. I'm like, you lived a lot of lifetimes in these years, because you had, at 21 years old or 19 years old, you had a daughter, and then you had me at 26. So where did you fit all this stuff in, right? Anyways, I thought she was lying, and it wasn't until after she died that I went through some of her papers and found a paper she wrote on Freud or something like some crazy, like a 16-page handwritten, typewritten, it was typewritten, paper on her perspective on, it was something like that. Freud or somebody like Socrates or something crazy. I'm like, oh, she was so smart. She was people stupid. She was brought, so she had her mom as that situation. So I just kept crawling into her brain and going, okay, so her dad leaves. She only sees her dad on special occasions. So she's got that father void. Oh, that's what people mean by daddy issues. And I just started putting all the pieces together and really seeing it from her puzzle. And I look at life as like a puzzle, that there's all these different pieces and we're always trying to put the picture together, but we don't want to deal with all the pieces. We don't want to put all the pieces in the puzzle. And so I try to put her puzzle pieces together and really see things from her perspective. And it still challenged me because I'm like, well, you could have still known. But again, thinking about the psychology of what we put ourselves through, I made that decision to break out of it, but not everybody does. Not everybody feels like they can or knows how to. So I thought she just got trapped. And then she just started reading books to try to help herself. But the more books she read, the more intelligent she got, more book smart she got, but more people smart she wasn't. And she was the kind of person that was unfiltered to the max up until the day she died. And so I always had to work on that aspect of me to change that big time. And I still had to work on it, but I developed a sense of empathy and understanding for the scared little girl that she really was in a big girl's body. And that was manifested through all the stuffed animals that she had. I started, again, she had stuffed animals all the time. Like, okay, everybody collects something, stuffed animals. Then I'm like, why do you have so many cats? Later in life, when probably the last year of her life, I started asking her more in-depth questions. We actually wanted her to write this book with me. We were having dinner one night with my wife, and I said, she goes, oh, after I'm dead, you're going to tell all these negative stories about me. I said, no, actually, I'm going to write a book. I said, you know what? Let's write a book together. Because I'm all about having both sides of the picture, because I learned that in the communications class, seek first to understand. I'm like, let's write the book together. Let's pick 10 events in our life. Let's pick 10 events in our life where I write my perspective and you write your perspective. We get together and then we talk about how we can learn from each other's perspective. And perhaps the reader can walk away with a different perspective on their own life. A mother-son duo team. And so that way you can know that your story was told. Because I would love to hear your story in your words, carefully thought out to better understand where you're at. And then she's like, okay, let's do it. And so she wound up getting diagnosed with lung cancer. And so her strength and everything wasn't as great as it was. So I bought her favorite pen. She was super OCD about what kind of pens she used, what kind of paper she used. So I bought all her pens and paper and I said, okay, let's pick this out. And every time I went to go visit her, which was usually every day or every other day, she's like, yeah. I said, you write anything? No. And I was like, you really don't care. You're kind of getting to that point where it doesn't matter anymore. You're starting to see the real value of life. And I watched that in her eyes. I watched that interactions as she progressively got weaker and weaker and weaker. And it wasn't until the last couple of weeks of her life that she really found out how she screwed up and how she could have done things differently. So for me, seeing that whole entire journey and being there, holding her hand as she passed away, again, affirmed that life happens for you and not to you. And I, still sometimes will have anger if I choose to, if I think about it from a reactionary standpoint. But now as I really get into the self-help fluffy bullshit, I realize love. We're not humans. We think we're human. Of course we're human. But I have learned through the coaches that I've had and the books that they've told me to read, the fluffy stuff. There was a book called Why Me, Why This, Why Now? And it was a book from like the 70s or the 80s because you could tell by the author's picture on the back. And I'm like, you want me to, because I ordered off Amazon. I said, you want me to read this? She's like, yeah, read it. And I started understanding about us and about our psyche and about our soul's journey. And I started reading The Untethered Soul by Mickey Singer and the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. 2 amazing books. And he talks about how we are souls having a human experience. And he talks about being able to detach from the emotions. And it goes in line with how I think about things of reacting versus responding. From the emotional standpoint, you could be in a situation and react. But what is that? The fight or flight. If I choose to step back, like we were saying earlier, take a breath, and now I'm learning about breathing and meditating. Like, okay, you know what? I can see that I've got emotion behind this. Now's not a really good time. Let me get back to you tomorrow. So I've learned to be able to do that because my mom was all reactionary.
That's a good quality to have.
Yeah, especially when you have a 4-year-old son. Hey, I appreciate what you're doing, but I'm going to go step out here for a second. I'll be right back.
Yeah.
He's 4. So I've learned that. So now I go into his mind. I get mad at first. I'm like, wait a minute. He doesn't care if his room is covered in toys. He thinks that's great. Now I can pick that one up, and so I'm coming in there going, my expectation is you have your floor clean. We have clean floors so we can walk in. That's my expectation. That's what I've been brought up with. That's what I like. I like cleanliness. So I'm coming here and putting my expectations on him when he's like, hey, Dad, this is cool. What's your beef? So I've learned to see things from his perspective. And even my wife sometimes gets mad and she goes, you do that all the time now. I'm like, that's the way we can understand and not be so mad and angry and resentful and retaliate towards people. So yeah, to the question, it took a lot of time, a lot of understanding, but one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself is really seeking first to understand. And Stephen Covey talks about it in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And once I started applying that rule alone in my life, my business success changed, my relationship changed, everything in my life changed. And people didn't expect it because I was that other person. I was like, no, I have to be right. Well, if I'm right, then you're wrong. And if you're wrong, you're going to be either fight or flight and not like me. So what does that do? And my mom always had to be right. So I teach people, do I want to be happy or do I want to be right? And you have to think about that. Like people can sit there and say, oh, this, and this. And you can sit there and go, no, you're wrong. But really, is this going to matter in 5 minutes, 5 weeks, 5 years? I'm going to make this person feel like shit.
Most likely not.
Yeah. I'm going to make this person feel like shit. Nah, come on. So it's a process, but it's one that I'm glad that I went through.
So your story brings up another question in my own mind from my own personal experience.
I hope it's your mind.
Oh, you know what? Maybe we can debate on that later because who knows? Who knows what this portal is? Maybe something. Anyway, it doesn't matter. So, but here's my question. The issue or the topic of guilt. That's because what I have seen is people make stupid choices, right? I know I have.
Oh, yeah.
And people around me have. People that were in charge of me when I was growing up, they did, right? And what I've found is that they have it's a silent killer. They have harbored guilt from their actions, and that has led to some devastating situations because they want to self-efface, self-deprecate, mutilate, just because they say to themselves, you know what, I deserve bad things because I did bad things. And I'm imagining that your mother had a bout with guilt when she was thinking about the situations that she's been in and the things that she's caused. Did you ever talk to her about that? Or what is your take on how that influenced your relationship or just her life in the later years?
It's a great question. Great question. Guilt is, that's a silent killer. It really is. And it's amazing how many people do feel guilty and they continue to punish themselves. We continue to punish ourselves over and over again for doing one thing. I mean, we've all done it. I've done one thing and continue to punish myself over and over again after the person said, hey, you made a mistake. You apologize. You did the right thing. You're trying to make amends. You're forgiven. But what do? We sit there and, bam, 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 bam. Do that. When she was growing up all my life, she smoked. Smoked cigarettes, chain smoker. And this is back in the 70s, late 70s and 80s when Nancy Reagan was out there, drugs kill, and this is your brain on drugs, and smoking kills, and it's when that big thing came out. And I remember being in school, and they would talk about smoking kills. And my mom was my idol when I was a kid. And so I go, oh, Mom, please stop smoking. And it smells, and it's nasty, and da-da-da-da. And on many occasions, don't tell me what the fuck to do with my body, blah, blah. It's my response. If I ever get lung cancer, it's going to be because I've driven the Los Angeles freeways with my windows down for 30 years or whatever. It's not going to be the cigarettes. Leave me alone. All throughout the years, started getting older, started coughing more. Mom, just give it up. That's when the first little inhalers, the nicotine inhalers started. So I bought those for her. I was not making very much money, and those things were like $30 a box. So I said, Mom, start using these things. No, fuck you. Don't tell me what to do with my body. My mom didn't have any guilt up until the end. My mom didn't give a rat's ass. If your cart was blocking her cart in the grocery store and you were off getting something, really? Are you going to be that inconsiderate that you can't put your cart over next to me? There's other people in the store. I mean, she wouldn't. I'm like, Mom, just move their cart over. She had to prove a point. She had to be right in every single thing that she did. No guilt, no absence of malice. Yeah. But if you were not on her side, like I wasn't when I decided to leave her, then you were, you're either with her or against her. And most people were against her because of the way she was. So throughout her life, she smoked. And like I said before, she developed lung cancer. what had happened, which is really crazy. It all started when I got a phone call one day saying that she had been drunk and that she'd been grooming her dog, and her dog had viciously bitten her all over her hand. And this is the second time it happened in her life. She did that when I was a kid. Before, I guess when I was a little kid, it happened that her dog bit her in the face, and she had to have a bunch of plastic surgery, rhinoplasty, and all this other stuff. So she says, Boo Bear bit me, and I think I might have to go to the hospital. And I'm like, oh, wow. Mom go to the hospital? Mom's always been invincible. So she tried to treat it herself because she was a doctor. I mean, she wasn't a doctor. She didn't pass the doctor's test, but this is how brilliant she got. She could talk to doctors, and they would ask her where she went to school because she read all the books.
Oh, wow.
I'm not even making it up. She for Christmas, she was like, I want the new Grey's Anatomy book, not the show, but she goes, I want the new PDR, the Physician's Desk Reference, which I know. I want this new whatever, a senior aging book like the doctors get. And she would read that shit and she would understand it. So she tried to take care of her own thing, tried to debris it and all this other stuff, but it wound up getting infected. So that started a few trips to the hospital to have it debrided and get it cleaned out. And lo and behold, later on, she started developing a sore on her upper shin on the right side. And it started off as a quarter, and then it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And she's like, yeah, this is weird. She goes, I'm treating it, and it's not going away. And I was like, oh, okay. And this is part of the time when she was going to the doctor. So they started looking at it, and they're like, well, and they thought it was a bunch of different stuff. They thought it was MRSA. It's just, the story is long. But ultimately what we found out was she had vascular insufficiency in her right leg. So there was no oxygenated blood getting out there to heal the wound. So they found out that, and they thought, they started doing Doppler sonars on her arteries and started finding out that, I was like, what's that? It's the microphone. Edit that. No, keep that in. So she had a carotid endarterectomy, which means they pull your carotid artery out and they cut it.
Endarterectomy. Okay.
Carotid endarterectomy.
Sounds complicated.
Now you made me think about it. Anyways, so they cut a hole, they pull her arteries out, clean out some of the calcification that was blocking it. She had like 98% occlusion on the right side. So they cleaned that out, put a stent in there, and then they did a Doppler on her leg, found out she needed a femoral bypass, did the femoral bypass.
Oh man.
It failed. And through that time, I'm like, Mom, you have to quit smoking. Like every doctor said, you have to quit smoking or you will die from this. And she's like, don't tell me what to do in my body still. And this ring is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so she had the two femoral bypasses. They didn't take because they would do I learned so much. They did the Doppler in her foot and find out there was no pulse down there. It's not getting any blood flow. And as her leg became necrotic,
man,
yeah, she did not give up. She did not give up. I have pictures. Her leg, literally, if this is the right leg, it started off as a quarter, and then it started spreading, and then it started flaking, and then literally her foot started going black. She literally, I got a phone call. She was in the Hemet hospital, and they said, we cannot take care of your mom anymore. She will not accept treatment. She's going to need her leg amputated. I'm like, what? Because I thought they needed to do another femoral bypass. I thought the doctors at the other hospital had screwed up. Blah, blah, blah. I probably could have been a malpractice case, but I'm not that kind of guy because she didn't keep up her end of the bargain. She finally did quit smoking. But I got the phone call and had to they wound up scheduling UCI Medical Center to do the amputation. So without me telling her, I said, okay, we're going to be transferring you to another hospital that's going to take care of you. And I thought, okay, maybe when we get there, because I'm in Hemet. I mean, Hemet's, no offense, but UCI Medical Center. UCI Medical Center. I mean, so I'm like, okay, we'll get there and they'll be able to figure this out. And then she won't have to have her leg amputated. Within the first day, doctor comes in and is looking at it. It looked bad. I mean, I swear I have pictures of it right before I got amputated too, because I'm weird like that. Documentary. Yeah. And I remember she's like, that they were telling me outside, they're like, if your mom doesn't get her leg amputated, she'll die. The blood in her body will become poison and she'll die. And I still remember this. I had to walk back in there to, again, make one of the toughest decisions in my life and one of the toughest calls in my life. I said, Mom, she goes, I'm not cutting my leg off. This is bullshit. Get me out of here. I mean, just screaming to high heaven. And I'm like, they looked me in the eyes like, there's no way. There's not. I said, can we try to do a buy? No. It's way too far gone. We could have been doing this months ago, but no. And I'm like, and I believed him because I was like, trust doctors, whatever. So I remember going back there, Mom, you have to do this. I said, they're scheduling for tomorrow. No, get me out of here. I'm like, Mom, this is the result of all your decisions. This is the result of everything that this is it. It wasn't MRSA and all this other stuff. I said, this is it. And I mean, her leg at that point looked like it had been sitting on a barbecue. I don't know how. I do not know how she did it. I'm tough with pain, but I do not know how she did that. Even they had cleaned it all out. They put a wound pump on there. She walked around with a wound pump on her leg, like sucking all the wound stuff out of there for like months, trying to heal it. But it was the arterial insufficiency. So you can suck all the juice out of there, but if you don't get blood flow back to that extremity, it chop. And through that process also, I learned about diabetes. I thought diabetes was just, oh, you take an insulin injection and you're good. But then, I mean, her husband, when I was a kid, was an insulin-dependent diabetic, and that's another story I had to deal with. But everybody said, you know, is your mama diabetic? Is your mama diabetic? I'm like, no, why? Do diabetics get their feet cut off? I'm like, oh, yeah, they get their legs cut off, you know? I'm like, oh, wow. So I learned about that whole side of things in life. And so what it ultimately got me to do was when she was in the hospital for the leg amputation, they had taken an x-ray of somewhere. I think they were doing a chest x-ray or something like that, but they wound up seeing some spots on her lungs. So after the amputation, a couple days later, they, because I had full rights to listen to everything and talk to them, and they said, we found spots on your mom's lungs.
Oh, man.
We need to do a needle biopsy. Are you kidding me?
Oh, man.
Really? Yeah. And just preliminary, we think it might be stage 4. I'm like, whoa.
Oh, damn.
I got to walk back in the same hospital room that I was in a couple of days ago,
man, and
say, hey, Mom, by the way, if you haven't been through enough already based on your own actions, which is tough to tell people, you need to go in for a needle biopsy because you might have stage 4 lung cancer. I do not have lung cancer. Mom, you got to go through the process. You got to go through the tests. You know from all the research and studies you've done, this is the way they're going to be able to determine whether or not it's malignant or benign and find out what's going on. Just do it. So she had to go through a battery of tests, wound up doing the needle biopsy, came back, yeah, stage 4. Wasn't from smoking, went back to smoking, was like, screw it, I'm going to go back to smoking. Because I told her at that time, leg amputated, she went to an assisted living facility. And, the deal was, I said, if you quit smoking, then I'll continue to help you as much as I possibly can. Meanwhile, she still had a trailer in Hemet with 16 cats in 4 cages.
Ouch.
So the cat thing never stopped. I mean, there's a lot in between there. She actually got a house for a while. She was normal. She had a job, and then she lost that house, had to come live with me in my garage. I bought her a 30-foot trailer, and that was fine for a while too. It was like she was retired and she lived on a super limited income and she had those cats. So I was literally driving from my corporate job to Hemet, to the hospital, back home, and I did that circuit for months, just wearing myself out. And then ultimately, she started getting a growth on her back. And we're like, what's this? At that point, I really didn't know about mastization of cancer. And this thing started off as a little ball and got bigger and bigger. I have pictures of that too. Wound up being about that big, growing out of her shoulder like a planet.
Wow.
And so went back to the doctor and they confirmed that was cancer that metastasized and that they needed to go in and remove this. I'm like, you're going to remove that? It's going to take her shoulder off. And so I remember I was in all the pre-op rooms. I got to go to places because of her personality that nobody gets to go to. I almost got into the operating room because she was screaming and throwing a fit. I got to go in the recovery room. Nobody ever gets to go in there. I got to go in there because she wanted her sunglasses. She wanted her glasses and her chapstick. She always had to have her glasses and her chapstick. It was. I'd be in the waiting room I'm like, she's gonna want me to be there. Like, no, Mr. Rausch, there's nobody. Mr. Christopher Rausch, please come to the. I'm like, oh, we need you to come in here. I said, my mom's going crazy, right? I was always the level-headed one. So after that operation, which they told me she might not survive, and I actually at that point, and this is the God's honest truth, I actually looked at the anesthesiologist and the doctor. I said, whenever it's her time, it's her time. And I kind of did this. I went, like, hey, if you give her a little extra, she's miserable right now. She wants to go home. So much to her personality and everything else, she came out of it and she was fine and wound up being in the hospital. And the craziest thing happened. I still remember this. I was in the hospital and I turned my back to her and I was getting something out of my backpack because basically I lived out of a backpack because everything was there.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I have my back turned to her. She goes, tell Barbara it's not worth it. And Barbara's my wife now, as you know. She goes, tell Barbara it's not worth it. I turn around thinking to myself, is she really going to acknowledge this? Is she finally going to come to grips with her life? Is this really going to be the moment where she kind of wakes up and goes, oh, yeah, now I get it. And so I turned around and I expected 1,000% some smart ass defensive comment. I said, tell Barbara it's not worth it. What? She goes, and she looked at me and she said, smoking. Because at that point she was like, you could hear her basically suffocating to death.
Yeah.
And her dad quit cigarettes. I used to smoke. I smoked up to 2 packs of cigarettes back in the day. But my grandfather had passed away 20 years after he quit smoking. And the day he died, I quit cigarettes. I just threw the cigarettes in the trash and was like, I'm not going to do that. Even if you quit, you die? No, thanks. And seeing what my mom was going through, even at a young age. So I said, cigarettes, huh? She goes, yeah. And I didn't press it. I just said, thank you, I will. Because at that point, I felt, and everything I'd learned in personal development, and I mean, you and I knew each other back then. I mean, she passed away in 2011. I had respect for her. I wanted her to have her dignity and not be like, see, Mom, I told you. It was like, and for me, that was like, I still get chills. And I was like, oh, she gets it now. After 69, actually 60, at that point, she was 68. After 68 years on this planet, you're finally starting to get what this is all about. She's, yeah, nobody comes and visits me, blah, blah, blah. I thought I had friends at the RV park, and, people would write her cards and stuff like that, but she finally started getting it. And on the drive home, she was put in another assisted living facility. And from the hospital to that place, I still had her trailer. And she said, I want to go home. She said, I want to go home. I said, Mom, you can't go home. You have an amputated leg. You have stage 4 lung cancer. You're not going to do the treatment. She said she was going to, but she wasn't. I said, you're not going to do the treatment. I said, you're only going to get worse. I said, you can't go back there. You couldn't make it there when you were there. There's stairs. Oh, you could put a ramp. We could get this, and we could do this, and we could do this, and trying to put it on me again to make her world better.
Oh, man.
And I had to say no. That's another time in my life where I put my life, my wife's life first. And I felt in some way I was being.
Be hard. That
oh,
had
yeah.
to be hard.
Because I knew she wanted to go home. And now that she realized the preciousness of life, she wanted to go home and be with her cats. She wanted to die in her trailer, but she'd always talked about committing suicide. So I'm like, not on my watch. You're not going to blow your brains out. She had a gun. And like, you're not going to blow your brains out in that trailer. So I have to go deal with that? No. So I had taken the bullets out of the gun way before. And I figured, well, if she ever asked me for the bullets, then she might have been looking to do it. And one day she's like, where'd the bullets for the gun go? And I said, why are you looking at the gun? So I get more bullets. I said, don't do it inside the trailer.
Oh, man.
I'm like, don't do it inside the trailer. And we had those very, very candid conversations. And so I remember that she was screaming at me, and I felt like here I am again, hurting her in her life. But I'm like, no, because if I do that, I'm going to have a shit ton of stress, worrying every single minute. She couldn't even make it to the bathroom anymore. She was just peeing in a bucket and going to the bathroom in a bucket and dumping it out. That's how bad she got before she had the leg amputation. So put her in the home, and I really tried to make her feel extra special. I wound up having to make the tough decision to find homes for her cats. That's another story. But yeah, it's been a crazy journey. So I'll let you ask
For her
question.
16 cats?
Oh, yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn. So what was the connection between her and cats? I don't know that one.
Self-love. It was the unconditional love. So she didn't have love from her mother. She didn't have love from her father. But from the stuffed animals and from the animals, she could always guarantee that she was going to be loved. And I get it. I love my cats and my dogs. I get it. I understand it. Because people are crazy. But
that's for damn sure.
You just have to find the right people. That's the problem.
Man. So now today you're doing so what is it that you would say you do? If somebody asks you, what do you do? I guess
I make people think. That's really what it is. I mean, I could call myself a coach or a speaker or an author or a show host or anything like that. My thing is to get people to think, is to get them to ask themselves questions and give themselves honest answers and then take action from that. So what I said is like, I want people to shift their perspective about their past, present, and their future, shift their perspective and kind of dig into the reality that everybody has their own journey, and it's okay. I mean, even through the last year with COVID, the presidential elections, the George Floyd situation, you could call it a murder situation, whatever it might be, everything that's happened over the last year, and seeing how the divisiveness in the United States has been, my goal is to get people to do what my mom did and just have that shift and kind of say, wow, it really isn't about what whatever you want to do, whatever anybody else wants to do, fine, go do it. Fly your freak flag. If you want to vote for Trump, you want to vote for Biden, you want to vote for an anarch, whatever the thing works for you, as long as it doesn't impact me and my family. The anarchist thing probably, but whatever your freak flag is, go fly it.
Okay, so you coach people and you have advice for them and you ask them to do certain things. And have you ever met resistance when you say, do this, and what does that look like? How do they resist? And then what do you do to get them to overcome the resistance?
It's a great question. Ultimately, it's about, again, looking at the aspect. Usually what they do is they want something, but they don't want to do the work. They don't want the uncomfortableness. They don't want, and ultimately it narrows down to, what do people think? What do people think? This is where I've been my entire life. That sounds hard for me to do. Okay, I just want you to change your perspective from being hard. Yeah, it's going to be challenging. So when we say something's hard, okay, that's just going to be, am I going to make through it? No, it's going to be challenging, but you're going to make through it. You're going to have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. But as soon as you start doing that, and as soon as you start allowing yourself to be your truest form of expression, you're going to find that people are going to be resistant to you. And I tell them the story about, how I wanted to better myself. And my friends were like, oh, Chris, what are you going to do? I said, sometimes you're going to have to make hard decisions. So I tell them to draw a line down the paper and put positive and negative and put the 5 people you're around the most. Again, Stephen Covey, 5 people you're around the most. Are they positive? Are they going to hold you accountable? Are they going to support you as you fly your freak flag? Are they going to say, oh, what are you doing? I coached a lady who was a senior in her years, and she had been widowed. And it was crazy how, the objection of what the church would say and what everybody else would say. But ultimately, I gave her the confidence, or she had the confidence. She just had to see things differently. She had to see things like, oh, no, I don't have to make sure that everybody likes me. I don't have to make sure that everybody's perspective of me is what they think it is. I just want to be my own individual. And so through that process, we create confidence by saying, okay, where is it that you feel like somebody's going to judge you? So we just start asking that question. Well, they're going to probably say this. Okay, well, you're making an assumption. Why don't you just go talk to some people? Why don't you get the input? Just start unpeeling the preconceived notion or the belief that something's going to be bad or something's going to be hard. I'm like, have you ever seen a beautiful view? Have you ever seen a mountain view? Yeah. Okay, what did it take to get up there? Oh, we went hiking this one time, and yeah, did you get hurt? Did you get scraped? Yeah. Oh my God, this one time, But how was the view? The view was amazing. Okay, that's life. You're going to get skinned up. You're going to get dinged up. It's going to hurt. It's going to be hard. You're going to sweat. You're going to run out of breath. You're going to wonder why you're doing this. And then you're going to get to that view and go, oh, wow, this is beautiful. This is great. And then you're going to go, wait, there's another view. Let's see if we can do that one. That was a little bit more challenging, but hey, I got strong from this one. I'll probably get strong from that one. And so many people go, oh my God, here's the view. And I don't want to do that again. That was too uncomfortable. I want to go back to my comfort zone because then I know what certainty is. I'm like, there is no certainty, even through COVID. Everybody, I want things to go back to normal. What's normal? I could literally get in my truck, Scott, and get T-boned by a driver, and this could be my last interview.
Right.
But I made sure when I left my house, I said, I love you guys. I gave my son a big hug because you just never know when your time's going to be. So really for me at this point, as a coach, as a mentor, it's really about identifying the fact of what is the legacy and what is the potential regret, because we're all going to go.
Yep.
We're all going to go. And for me, regrets are the single biggest factor that motivates me. So it's about finding what is that person's legacy. Do you want to be known for this person who played it safe because you're worried about it? These people are going to be dead. Their opinions are going to be dead, but you're going to still be sitting here going, yeah. And then I tell them a story. I got a friend of mine who's a multi-millionaire, if not a billionaire. A distant friend. I want to make sure I clarify that. Not like we hang out all the time, but I know him, and I've heard his conversations, and we've had some. And I said, and his dad got cancer, and he was trying to spend all this money to save his dad. All the money in the world, can fly him to Germany, do all this stuff. And his dad did pass away. And I mean, trying every type of alternative, Eastern med, everything. All the money in the world couldn't save him. I said, did you ever ask your dad, like, if you could do your life over again, what would you do differently? Even though his dad was successful too, not nearly as successful as his son. And he said, his dad was really great and great life and everything. He goes, yeah. He goes, I really regret not taking those chances where I could have been on the leading edge of something. He goes, I had a lot of opportunities in different industries and different things, but I always wanted to play it safe. I came from nothing, so when I got something, I wanted to play it safe. And I said, oh, he was in survivor mode. Because I think that we're in a couple of different situations. We can either be in survival mode or thrival mode. And for me, it wasn't until I got my coach back in 2019 And I thought I'd done all the work, and I thought I was all woke and everything else. And I'm like, what is this block? There's some sort of block that's keeping me from being like really successful. I'm like, right there. What is that? What is that? And she goes, fuck, mate. She goes, you're in survival mode all the time. I'm like, no, I'm not. I've made it. I have a nice house. I have nice things. I have a rental property. I have a great job. I'm not in survival mode. Yes, you are. Because you're constantly worried about becoming homeless again. You're constantly worried like, okay, if I lose that job, then I've got this, and this, and I can sell this, and I can do this, and I can do this. You have every out planned to make your life certain. But Chris, there's no certainty in life. The magic in life is being a kid. And then I really started seeing the world through my son's eyes and going, wow, we lose that playfulness. We lose that curiosity. We lose that sense of adventure. So in my clients, I get them back to that kid-like state. First, we change the perspective about anything that they have a false belief about why they are a certain way. So how can we repicture that? How can we repaint that? Write a letter to themselves. I want you to write a letter to your younger self and let you know that everything's going to be okay, that you're going to turn out great and heal that little person inside of you. A couple of different ways. I have people write their eulogy. Back in 2008, when I was stuck and trying to figure out what the hell I was going to do, and when I finally started Master Motivators, my company, I literally was like, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I went to a funeral of a coworker, and I was sitting in the back of the church, and everybody was getting up there eulogizing her and saying really beautiful things about her. And I knew her. I didn't know her that well, but I was like, wow, I really didn't know Anne that well. She was a really beautiful person. Everybody just person after person after person get up there saying all these beautiful things. And then my buddy Dave Riley gets up there in his gray suit and his pink tie and just starts blubbering. I'm like, wow. And in such a beautiful way. And I thought, all right, I'm all about questions. So I said, Chris, if you died tomorrow, who would show up and what would they say? Who would show up and what would they say? And at that point, probably 10, 15 people would show up, probably a case of beer, bottle of Jack Daniels, Motley Crue CDs, and they would tell stories about, oh, Chris did this when he was drunk. Chris did this thing. Chris loved girls. Chris was a smart ass. Chris, had an amazing story and turned around. Chris did stupid. I'm like, I want my legacy to be way better than that. I don't want to be, that was a point in my life. That's part of still who I am. I'm not that much different than that person, but I've changed so much. And so I went home and I was like, let me write my eulogy. So I took out a pad of yellow paper and a pen. I still remember it. And I was like, we are here, gathered here today to remember the life of Christopher Rausch. Blah, 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 blah. Wrote it. Probably took me about 20 minutes to write it, a full page. And then I got to the end and I was like, I think I went and got a Pepsi or something like that, came back to my office and I sat down and I started reading it out loud. I started reading it and I'm like, let me read it out loud as though you were at a church or at a service or something like that. And as I was reading it, halfway down, I started having tears down my face. I did not expect to cry.
Oh, wow.
I did not expect to cry. I knew what I wrote, but reading it in its entirety moved me so much that I realized that the things I was focusing on were bullshit. Nothing in there about my car being on the cover of Hot Rod. Nothing in there about me playing guitar and learning how to play 19 songs and all this other stuff. It was about, and ultimately at the end, it says, and it's still to this day, I live this every single day, that Christopher Rausch will have fought for what was right and what was fair. He will have risked for which that mattered, and he will have left the earth a better place for who he was and what he did. So from that point forward, that became my operating plan. So then I had a basis to be able to say, is that working, is the decision I'm about to make, the choice I'm about to make, is this working for that legacy or against that legacy? Right? So if I'm thinking about having a couple of drinks and getting in my car, I'm okay. Is that a smart move in this legacy to live a long time, to ultimately be a father? Because I wasn't a dad at that point. No, this is stupid. So either don't go anywhere or call an Uber. So I started making different decisions, and I started becoming a different person, and really immersing myself into personal development even more. So my gift now is being able to have people do that, have those breakthroughs. I mean, that older lady who had the breakthrough, I just had a meeting with her not too long ago, just a little catch-up session, and she's doing fantastic. She has a boyfriend now. She realizes, she goes, I have to leave my church because they're not comfortable with the relationship because he's Catholic and I'm Christian. And so she stood on her own. She's like, and before she was petrified of what the church would say if she started dating.
Wow.
Because she's the secretary and all this other stuff. She does the youth miniseries and stuff like that. And she was kind of worried, but then she's like, now I've got the confidence. Now I've got the ability, and it's okay for them to think what they want to think. I'm going to go do my thing. And I'm not going to worry about that because now I'm happy. And now I see that you're happy when you do the things that you love to do and not worry about what everybody else is going to say because they're generally miserable. And that's where that misery loves company thing. So yeah, we just got them. And to this date, haven't had a failure yet.
Wow. And what you do is basically the definition of move, what you're talking about, because, in order for them to have a different life, they have to have a different perspective. In order to have a different perspective, they have to move something in their mind or something in their body. But, and the whole acronym of move is make a difference in somebody else's life, which is 100% what you're doing. Because when you do that, you're able to get out of your own head. And when you're out of your own head, your thoughts can't harm you. But when you're in your head and you're thinking about woe is me and this is the situation, then you are a sitting duck and it is brutal. Most people I know. And then, the O is offer up your time, talents, and gifts. And so your life growing up was freaking hard, man. Like, to hear that and to put myself in your shoes, like what you're doing with your mother, right? I do that and fuck, And so, but guess what? That was the biggest blessing to the world, because diamonds are shaped from coal, yeah, with lots of pressure. And if you didn't have that pressure, you wouldn't have the capacity to make the impact of what you're doing. And so I just see this story after story, and the V is to find victory in the small things, right? So you look back and you're appreciative, and you look around and you're appreciative. And even in those moments of adversity, you're able to glean the insight, which is the appreciation that you're here and you're able to affect change, and you're able to take that experience and translate it to others' benefits. And then the E is to encourage others, right? And so your story represents in a huge way everything about move. And so you and we're really on very similar pages, dude. And so I'm just freaking ecstatic that you came on the show to talk about your situation, because I didn't know all of that. And I know whoever's listening to this is going to say, damn.
I hope so.
My mom wasn't that much of an asshole. My dad screwed me up, but you know what? Or that kind of thing. My mom was worse. I'll go toe to toe for his story. But then he's taking it and he's doing something good with it. I guess maybe I could too. And it's so crazy because you don't know the lives that you touch. You don't know, from something like this, from your own show, people that heard something, and they may have just heard one little thing, and you might have been saying it and meant this, but they heard it and heard your heart, and they applied it and they felt it, and it changed them and it impacted them. So I definitely think that you're on the right road. I think that you have great things in store for you, and I'm glad that we're friends. I'm glad that we're connected, and I'm excited to see what's going to come out of this, and if there's something that I can do to help. But so if somebody wanted to reach out to you and get some type of coaching, or maybe get some of your insight, where would they find you? How would they get a hold of you?
In a hole in the desert.
No, longitude and latitude, or
yeah,
what?
No. The easiest place to get hold of me is my website, ChristopherRausch.com, RAUSCH, ChristopherRausch.com. Newly remodeled, looking awesome. My web designer has become a personal friend of mine. Ben did a phenomenal job with it. So yeah, I'm very proud of it. All my stuff is right there. All my social media there. My shows, everything is all in one spot.
And haven't you written a book already?
I did write a book. I have not published it.
Oh, well, what the hell's wrong with you?
That's a long. You want to get? We got another show.
Oh wait, here we go again.
Let's talk about what's wrong with Chris. Oh yeah, we got that show. Yeah,
that could be a show. What's wrong with Chris?
Let's talk about the perfectionist syndrome that you get.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's,
okay. Paralysis by overanalysis kind of thing.
Yeah, I did write a book called 69 Tips for Living Your Kick-Ass Life, Volume 1. And it was basically a riff on, do you remember Life's Little Instruction Book? No. It was like gifted to everybody. It was probably about that big. It was called Life's Little Instruction Book. And basically it was like, it was all
like chicken soup for the soul kind of thing.
A little bit, but it was basically like a life manual, if you will. And it was just number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It was you just read, like, be nice to somebody today. It was like the easy stuff. And so I took that premise and I made it foul. I put my own spin on it, talking my real language. Somebody asked me the other day, like, how would you describe yourself? And I said, well, and the easiest way that I found the most effective is that I'm one part Tony Robbins, I'm one part George Carlin, all mixed up at an AC/DC concert. So that was kind of the framework of the book. It was sarcasm. It was like one of the tips was like, don't be an asshole. You're like, just don't be an asshole. And that's like, be nice to everybody, but like, just don't be an asshole. And then I go in and I talk about, it's actually the download on the download that should be still there is a download of all of those tips. But in the book, I expand on each one of those tips. And of course, in a more personal development way, but I'm like, here, don't be a dick. Here's how you don't be, and by the way, if you don't understand this, then you might be the dick. So it's kind of a sarcastic, funny way of looking at life. And I figured for the blue collar kind of demographic, people out there that liked, clean, clear cut language, if you will, would appreciate that. And so I wrote it in that vein. I wrote it from the voice of trying to be sarcastic in a way and trying to be funny in writing. Like, oh, that would be funny. Let me write this. Thinking, okay, I'm writing, but I'm not talking. So I got the book done and I set it aside. And everybody told me, set it aside for a couple of weeks and then go back and give it a once through. And as I was reading it, I was like, this sounds contrived. It sounds like I wrote it with the intent of writing a funny, sarcastic book.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
So, because I was reading it, I read it out loud. I'm like, I really wouldn't say that in a conversation. I don't imagine me saying it that way. So I had a problem with putting the book out because it didn't sound like my voice. It sounded like me, but it didn't sound like my voice. So a bunch of people were like, oh my God, everybody goes through that with their first book. It's not funny enough. Just put it out. I'm like, no. And then literally I was going to revise the book because it's already done. I've already got a deal with Rockstar Publishing, so I could just go get it published. And then my mentor, who I value my mentors immeasurably. So if you guys don't have mentors, coaches, you need mentors and coaches because they keep you on track. So my mentor had said that she's spiritually deep, all this interconnected universe stuff. That's all the way I describe it. And she says, I had a thought about you and you need to write a book. And, and she does a reading for me and spells all this stuff out. She goes, that's going to be your thing, Chris. And I said, well, I've got this book. I planned on doing the sarcastic book. I called it Volume 1. So I was going to do 1 or 2 of those and kind of get my feet out there. Obviously, just as more of a sales funnel thing, kind of like, here's how you can get to know about me. And I told her, I said, I have another book called Change Your Attitude, Change Your Life, which is a personal development book. I said, I've been writing that over the years. It's all about emotions and our conditioning and the whole process. It's like a manual. That's why I called it the Kick-Ass Guide to Life. It was like a guide to life, the kick-ass way. And she's like, no, we're doing it on a Zoom call. She's like, no. And I said, well, I got this other book, but I want to do this book like after the other books because I want this one to be the one that potentially gets published. And she's like, well, tell me about that one. And I said, well, that one's called It's Just You and Me, Kid. It's a story and an adventure of a mother and son who lived kind of a screwed up life, but ultimately both, I can't remember what the exact secondary line because it's changed so much, but initially it's called It's Just You and Me, Kid, because I was supposed to be placed for adoption when I was born. And I found that out later in life. I've also found out that my mother had several abortions. One she had after me.
Oh, man. And
so I would have had a brother, apparently, in 1972. I was born in 1969, but she said she had an abortion in 1972. But she was supposed to place me for adoption. And I said, well, why didn't you? And she says, well, I delivered you, and the nurse back in the day would say, do you want to see him? And she said, I just wanted to see you for a second. So they put the cloth down and laid you against me. And I just kind of looked into your eyes and said, well, it's just you and me, kid. And I was like, okay. So, and then immediately Patricia's like, that's the one. And I'm like, oh, you want me to go through all the painful stories of my past first? She goes, that's the one, Chris. She goes, your story is what really will catapult you to the next level. Your story is going to be read by so many people. She's like, I see it. She goes, Chris, you don't realize this. And this is sometimes, and I've worn this, believe, she actually gave me this. This is funny, it's a tie-in story. She actually gave me this bracelet. It used to be dark blue. It used to be like this. But I have this since 2013. 2013, she gave me this thing called Believe. And sometimes we have to believe in others. We have to believe what other people see and feel about us. Sometimes when we don't have that own belief. She's like, Chris, you don't realize it. I watch your shows. She goes, you have a unique way of asking questions. You have an Oprah uniqueness about you. And that's all I'll say. She goes, you have so much that's ahead of you that it's going to be unimaginable. She goes, but you need to get this book done. Because that's what the universe is telling me. She goes, that's why I felt compelled. And I knew her, and back she wrote a book called The Karmic Alibi, and I got a copy of it. And back then I started reading. I'm like, what's this? I couldn't even finish reading it. I was like, I told her this today. I'm like, I got your book, but I was like, what's this shit? Universe of karma and blah, 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 blah. If I can't see it, touch it, feel it, it doesn't exist back then. So I remember that. And people do come into your life for certain reasons, season, or a lifetime. So in 2013, she came into my life and everything was great. And she gave me this bracelet. And then it wasn't until last year, like around after COVID started, that out of the blue, she said, hey, can we have a call? And she tells me, she goes, I felt compelled that I needed to connect with you. And we are polar opposites. I mean, she's artist and very quiet. She's amazing. I mean, she's a beautiful person. But here I am, I'm a bull in a china shop. And for me to sit there and go, why are you reaching out to me? What is this? And she's like, I have to. I'm a spirit guide. All this, again, to me was fluffy stuff. She goes, I'm called here to tell you this, Chris. That's all I can tell you. It's up to you what you do with it. So that's the book I'm working on that I told myself would have the rough draft done by the end of May. I said this last year in September, and I haven't written a word, God's honest truth, since December. I tend to be one of those people that will go hide out in my trailer and go camping for 5 days and pound it out, because I've done everything up until we're about to be homeless. So I've done my childhood, which is all by memory. I started keeping journals in 1997.
Oh, damn.
So from 1997 until now, everything's journaled. All the other situations with my mom, being in the hospital, all the different things that I went through mentally in my own life, all of that is journaled. So I just need to get to that part. And then it's just about going back through and reading those journals. And yeah. I'm not looking forward to that, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty messed up. I used to complain about the same thing over and over again. And I'm going to see that. But at least now I know from the perspective where I'm at now, I had to go through that.
Yeah. Well, and I feel like you're going to have a rough road to hoe in the way of looking at all of the experiences and how do you glean which ones, because you can't have everything. You're going to have 5 novels, right? You're going to have so much stuff. So how do you boil it down and put these things on the shelf? But those things were very important. Those things were shitty. Those things were things that people don't experience. And how are you going to put that on the shelf in order to have only these stories? That, to me, I think is going to be a real difficult process. I'm
just going to give it to somebody else and tell me which stories do you think. I'm going to give it to like 5 people, and you tell me which stories speak to you the most.
So I had the reason I'm saying that also is from personal experience. With Sage, and so I had my son that had a 10% chance of survival and ended up he was in the NICU for over 7 months and had 10 major surgeries. And after the whole thing was done, I had put together, there was 15,000 videos and pictures of me documenting every day. And my wife, like, she's really good. She got a lot of pictures, a lot of everything. And so I wanted to do like a little sizzle reel, little something like to put out there. Hey, this story is crazy. Check it out. And what I did was, as I went through, and the medical records were 5,586 pages. Okay. So I went through and looked at all of the different things that happen on a timeline and the different medications and the different procedures and the different surgeries and the different doctors and all of it. Right. And literally, I just did it from a documenting basis. Like, boom, this day, this happened. This day, this happened. This procedure, that procedure. This procedure, that procedure. And then just put it on a timeline on a video where it was like da-da-da-da-da-da, right? Now, that's not telling a story. That's not showing the whole entire event. That's just listing things, right? That was 42 minutes long. And then I'm like,
sizzle reel.
How do I take this out and put it aside and only, and that reminds me of your story. You had so many different things that happened, but how do I take that out? Because that was a life and death situation, and that's freaking important, and that's crazy. I can't. I don't know how to do that. So it's a documentary is what it is, and again, it's a similar thing, and that's one of my other projects that I'm putting together at some point soon. Not as soon as I want.
Oh, you're going to write your book in May, huh?
Well, yeah, no, I haven't said that yet. Maybe I need to. But what I did do is I ordered something online, write your book and whatever. We'll see how it works.
I've got a few of those.
Yeah. So we'll see. I know you got to start somewhere, and at some point, you can't pull a carrot out of the ground and expect it to grow faster, right? So it comes when it needs to come.
It will.
And I guess that's where faith comes in, right? So before we end this conversation, let's have a conversation.
Are we done? I've been just getting started.
I don't know how, it's been a little while, but it's been power packed, full of interesting stuff. So, but I want to touch on faith.
Sure.
Now, I don't necessarily mean faith when it comes to like your religion, if you're Christian or Catholic or, you know, any of that. What I mean is your faith in humanity, in what you think. Like, for example, the Hebrew language doesn't have a word for coincidence. They say divine intervention. And so coming from a point where you're like, if I can't see it, touch it, smell it, and taste it, it don't exist, to somebody that has a very tremendous influence in you that has made very interesting points where you're like, whoa, how did you know that? How did you, and it touched you in somewhere where you can't really explain, right? And you have that feeling and you have that understanding. And so it's really changed your perspective. And so how does faith look to you right now? What does faith mean?
Probably one of the best questions I've ever been asked. Great question. Faith. When you said faith in humanity, it really triggered me into thinking about the last year. And over the last year, I have been very cynical about humanity and seeing all the bullshit on social media, the divisiveness, the name calling, the rhetoric, everything. It's not about politics. It's about hurt people. Hurt people hurt people. That's what it is. I mean, if you want to vote for whoever, fine. It's all supposed to happen. So my faith is that it's shifted from everything happening to me to everything happening for me. So I have the faith that whatever is in my journey is supposed to happen, and that whatever is happening in anybody's journey is supposed to happen. It's really about those critical points, like I've shared in this interview, this discussion about, you know, you get to those points, you have a fork in the road. I mean, the fork in the road. I could have sat there and said, oh, I can't leave my mom. That fork in the road. My life would have turned out much differently. The fork in the road. Go to school. No. I would probably be working at Circle K and pushing shopping carts. No offense to anybody who I mean, trust me, there's some days where I would love to just do that, especially when I was in my corporate life. I'm like, man, I just want to do something simple, because it's not about money. It's not about ego. It's not about numbers. It's about the impact. It's like you're talking about a move. That is tremendous right there, because that's what life is about. And once people start realizing what life is really about, then we can get to the humanity part. That's why I'm on the board of directors now for helphealhumanity.org. That's why I'm over there. It's because we need to heal each other. We need to heal one another. And through that process over the last year, I just like, oh my God, people are losing their shit. But then this little app came out. I don't know if you've heard about it, Clubhouse.
I have heard about it. I haven't been on it. People have mentioned it to me, but.
So Clubhouse for me has been massively perspective shifting, because literally if you watch social media and you watch the news, which I don't, I hear about it because I'm in a house with two women who love to watch the news. So I do hear about it and they love to talk about it. I stopped watching the news like 10 years ago because I found myself at 11 o'clock at night yelling at the TV, but yet getting up in the morning and not doing anything about it. Oh, I'm mad about the sex trafficking. Oh, I'm mad about this. I'm mad about that. But I didn't do nothing. Nothing. What do? I go to work and talk about it with other people. Oh, can you believe what this is? And this is bullshit. And wasting valuable time when we could be changing the world or changing ourselves. Bitching about stuff that really doesn't even matter. That's coming from a place of a hurt child. So my goal is to try to find the hurt child in people. But when this Clubhouse app came out, which is essentially for those of you guys who aren't familiar with it, it's like the old style chat rooms. So you get on the phone, you're just talking to a bunch of people and you're just having conversations. You have no idea. Well, now you do. So on this app, and I didn't want to do another app. So I was focusing on my Instagram, social media. I wasn't focusing on my social media at all, but then I started having people wanting to be on my show. But then they would say, well, what are your numbers? I'm like, I really don't care what my numbers are. As long as one person hears it and is impacted, that's all I care about. I don't care about having 17 million downloads. I mean, ultimately, that's my goal and that's my vision. But for right now, I'm great because I know it's going to go in that direction. But I wasn't focusing on that. And then I had somebody say, hey, you need to get on Clubhouse. And I'm like, yeah, right. I'm not going to do another social media thing. I've got enough on my plate. And then one day, within 2 hours of each other, I had two other people who were influential in my life. Like, Chris, really, you need to get on this app. This is all about voice. This is all about connecting. This is all about serving, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, all right, send me the thing. So they sent me the invite. And if you know anything about it, the invites originally probably still were coveted because it's only for iPhone users right now. They're developing the Android app. And so I was like, and it's again, that little whisper, Chris, get on the app. Well, I did not want to do anything more social. I was like, social. Everybody's a bunch of idiots on there. I don't need any more idiots. No. But there was something that said, go do it. So I signed up for it, and I learned quickly. It's basically like the Mall of America. If you took that place and you just took a giant area where you could go to any seminar you want. So I'm a visual person. So literally, I imagine walking through a door, and you're like, okay, I could go and learn about real estate over here. I can go learn about personal development here. I could go learn about yoga. I can go have a silent room here. I could go learn about Black Lives Matter. I can go into any room and become a part of a conversation or listen to a conversation for that connectedness. Because people were zoomed out. People were all zoomed out. People were stressed out. But what was crazy about this is I started going to these rooms and fully expecting like a pitch session or whatever else at a traditional seminar, hearing all these personal development experts, doing all this shit. And I was blown away at the amount of compassion, love, empathy, everything that people in the rooms that I was attracted to were pouring into one another. People were getting on like, I don't know what to do. I lost my job, and I literally, if it wasn't for the fact they can't evict us right now, I'd be. And then people were just pouring in, and people weren't going, oh, hi, I'm Christopher Rausch, and I'm this, and I have this, and I have this. People just like, okay, have you thought about that? And just start pouring into one another. And then I would go check. You can see their profile linked to their social media. You go link to their social media, and you find out they have like 10 billion followers. There's some Tony Robbins type of guy. But they're not in there flashing their ego. They're not in there flashing their numbers. Like, they're not in there offering a program. They're genuinely trying to help humanity get stronger.
Interesting.
And in these rooms, there would be 10 people, 60 people, 100 people, and not once, Scott, not once did anybody say, hey, before I help you, who did you vote for? Hey, before I help you, what's your stance on abortion? Hey, before I help you, what's your stance on vaccines? Hey, before I help you, what color is your skin? No. Everybody in that room. And if you look at the statistics, what studies say, 50% of us are divided. So you get a room of 20 people, 10 of us are one way and 10 of us are another. Chances are, if we're all friends, then most likely we'll be the same. But you take a random sampling, you go to the grocery store and you tell everybody stop. 50% of us are like, yeah, you voted for Trump, you voted for Biden, socialist, and whatever. But not in these rooms. Cool. Never, not once. So when I talk about faith for me is each of us taking responsibility first for ourselves, our self-love, our self-care. People aren't doing that. I've given probably 100 complimentary coaching calls over the last year, just as my way of giving back. Just my way of saying, hey, listen, if you're struggling, I want to help you. And that's why I got out of the personal development industry, because I found that a lot of people weren't really after that. And through these calls, and Tony Robbins had said this a long time ago, is when you've been doing this for a long enough time, you start seeing patterns. And for me, it was like, I didn't really expect that, but I was asking these questions. It occurred to me to ask this question. And when I would hear people, I'm like, do you love yourself, yes or no? And I would preface it like, the question I'm about to ask you, I want you to answer as immediately as possible. And then we're on Zoom, so I can see their facial features. Like, do you love yourself? Absolutely, yes or no? Yeah, I think so. Okay, well, there's the issue. Ladies and gentlemen in America, there's the issue. If you don't love yourself, guess what? Start there. Start there. Do not start with yelling at everybody else. Start right here. Start giving yourself some self-love. Start looking at what you're tolerating and stop tolerating some of that stuff and start taking that time and loving yourself. Hey, if you get anything out of this, get that. So once we establish if you don't love yourself, then you have these expectations out there that you want, I'm not loved. Well, you're not loving yourself. You're not putting yourself first. You're being a victim to everybody else around you. You're hoping, wishing, and praying that everybody's going to give you some significance and say, yeah, attaboy. I said, but if you're 5, don't have your back. I reunited with my sister, Scott. She left when I was 16.
No way.
Oh, yeah, I want to bring another twist to the story.
Oh, let's hear it.
Yeah. So in 2005, I think it was 2005, my sister left when I was 16. I was 9. She's 7 years older than I am. And if you want to hear another fucked up story, ask me about how I got my name. That's another thing. Yeah, ask me how I got my name. I told you there's a lot of stories. So, yeah, and I always wanted a family. I always wanted, everybody else around me had family, had normal lives and all that stuff. But I had got to a point where I was successful and I was great. And I owned my house out in Riverside, my first one. And then this is when the internet was getting big. I started getting these ads for People Search. Find people you've been disconnected with. And of course, social media was coming out and everything like that. And so I went on People Search. I remember this on AOL. I think it was AOL or something like that. And I typed in Maria Rausch. Maria G. Rausch. And boom, came up. And it was like $9.95 to buy the records. I'm like, I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it. Guess where she lived?
No, somewhere close.
She lived less than a mile away from me.
No way.
Not kidding.
Less than a mile?
Well, it might have been a mile. Literally, it was out of my street,
Still,
over
a mile.
over a bridge, down a couple of blocks and to the right.
Lord.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So, and I figured, and my mom was successful at that point. She got out of the motel and bought a 4-bedroom house in Corona. Yeah. She got a job. She was normal for a little while. So I was like, okay, this might be a good time. Kind of reunite the family. We're all adults now. It'd be kind of cool. My sister hopefully has learned. My mom's in a little bit better place now. Let's try this. So I got in contact with her. And I was surprised. Because she'd been gone since she was 16. I remember when I said that her dad was normal and educated
Right.
and everything.
Right.
This is when I really found out about genes. When I found out about not the genes you wear, but the genes. Mm-hmm. And I found out about victimhood and all these stories that we tell ourselves. When I first met her, obviously I was surprised that she was older and she hadn't taken care of herself as well as I remember her being when I was younger. So that was like the first sign. She smoked, which is not a problem. I think I smoked socially at that point. But as I got to know her, I found out she was exactly like my mom.
Mm.
She had developed the same personality down to the house full of cats, down to the house full of books, down to the same occupation, down to the same excuses why her life was fucked up and why everybody else was stupid, psychological disorders, all this other stuff. She turned out exactly like my mom. Exactly. And then she would apologize to me. She's like, oh, baby brother, I can't believe that, you had to go through that with mom and being homeless and da-da-da-da. And then she would ask me, like, so how did you turn out this way? How did you turn out this way? I'm like, I chose not to be like mom. And I did a lot of hard work. I read a lot of books. I went to therapy. I got coaches. I did a lot of self-examination on myself and realized that isn't the person that I wanted to be. I have tendencies like her, of course, but I wanted to like people. I wanted to love people. I wanted to help people. I wanted to be a good parent. At that point I wasn't a parent yet. And it blew my absolute mind that she had a normal life, but yet she never let go. Never. She's still.
Wow.
And I got us back together. And the sad part was, as I told both of them, listen, behave. I'm the kid, right? I'm the kid. You two behave. Let's not talk about the past. Let's not blame each other, blah, blah. We're all grown. You have a house. You have a house. I have a house. Let's just try to be a normal family. And it kind of went on for a little bit. And then one night, I think it was Thanksgiving or something like that. I had Thanksgiving at my house and there was cocktails. And all of a sudden my sister goes, we were talking. I was like, this is actually going pretty good. And my wife was there. And then all of a sudden, my sister goes, well, that was your fault, Mom. And I was like, oh no. And I immediately said,
the blame game.
I immediately said, I'm like, no. We're not going there. No, my house, my rules. No. And then the conversation started getting like, and I was like, oh, fuck, no. And then my sister started showing more of her signs. And unfortunately, I won't go into the rest of the story, but ultimately I had to wish her well. And I tell people that, and they're like, what if it's your family? You have to wish well. I'm like, let me tell you a story. So I did. I literally, she got mad at me because I wouldn't give her a guitar. And I said, I'll lend you a guitar. I said, but I'm not going to give you a guitar. Oh, you were always this, da-da, and just starts coming unglued on me about how special I was. I'm like, I was a baby. I had no choice that you had to take care of me. Why are you all mad at me? Why are you mad at me because I won't give you a guitar? What? Really? You're still that type of person. You're still that 16-year-old girl who's all mad at the world, all pissed off because you didn't get what you wanted. I have not spoken to her since. I wrote her a very nice email and said, I wish you all the best. I said, but do not contact me anymore. Go live your life. And sometimes I feel sad about that in a way because now I have Jackson and she could be an aunt, but toxicity, that will not change. I'm pretty sure she's either dead or still the same person. I will almost guarantee it. And I feel bad about it in a certain way, but when they say blood is thicker than water, that's BS. And going back to your faith, what started this is I have faith that people are inherently good. I have faith that if we can say the right things to the right people and listen to people more than tell people what to do, that we can start healing. So in Clubhouse and seeing this, nobody's ever done that. Nobody's ever asked any questions. I'm a part of a group called now Evolve Mastery with a guy named Princeton Clark. For me, just being me, raw and unscripted, swear, stupid shit falls out of my mouth sometimes. This guy was like, man, I need you to have a part of my team because you articulate. And so he's invited me. Normally I don't do any JVs like I was telling you before, but his passion and the people that he has on his team are genuinely interested in changing the world and really being that impact for both youth, which I'm very passionate about. That's how I got into speaking. You know that, was going to speaking to youth and like saying, hey, listen, if I went through this fucked up journey, so can you. You'll be all right. It's all about perspective. And that was one of the greatest gifts of my life also, was being able to go back to the school I dropped out of and speak to the 7th and 8th grade class.
That's actually cool.
That's actually
very cool.
That's actually a video on my YouTube channel.
Where's your YouTube channel again? What is it?
Well, it's youtube.com/the Christopher Rausch.
Okay.
Or it's if you go to ChristopherRausch.com, there's a little YouTube thing. But there's a video on there called "The 7th Grade Dropout Returns Home."
How did you get your name?
How did I get my name? Well, it was interesting. So my mother's maiden name was Linda Mary Efting. So, as I said before, various psychological disorders. She changed her name, I think she said 26 times before I was born.
What?
Yeah. So she settled on Meredith Samantha Blake as her name. She liked it because it was MSB, Ms. B, Ms. Blake. She's very big into initials. Very big in initials. This is back in the old days where, the professional people had the monograms, and like my grandfather was RJ. He was always known as RJ, Raymond Joseph Efting. RJ, hey RJ. So she expected that I would be in business, so she wanted me to have cool initials. Well, in thinking about that, she was like, well, your sister's last name is Rausch because her father's last name is Rausch. And my mom was married to her sister's dad. So they actually were a family for a while. Then they got divorced because he's like, you're not well. You're not well. So in thinking about that, she's like, well, I wanted you and your sister to have the same last name, so I gave you the last name Rausch. If you guys were in school, or when you guys are in school, that you guys would like be brother and sister. You'd be known as the same, as opposed to you being Christopher, or her being Maria Rausch, and you being, Christopher Efting or Christopher Blake or whatever this might be. And so she says, okay, I'm going to name you Rausch. And then she says, then I really like the name Christopher. So I named you Christopher. And she goes, I didn't realize at the time, but she always claimed that she was Jewish. She goes, and I still really don't understand this to the fullest extent, but she goes, I was Jewish, and then I named you Chris, which is the son of Christ. And I said, okay, so I got a name that didn't jive with how it is that you wanted, but you're the one that gave it to me. And then she threw it, and she's like, okay, what would be a cool CR? Well, CR is a cool thing, but how about CBR? Okay, well, CBR is a cool name, so I'll give you my last name as your middle name. So I'm Christopher Blake Rausch. But here's the funny part. My biological father's real name is David Cross. So any of my siblings out there I haven't met, I'm sorry, but this is how you find out. It's either 23andMe or right now. But yeah, so my biological dad is named David Cross. I met him once when I was like 2 years old for a second, because I think he came over to hammer on my mom or something. So I just remember seeing this silhouette, and he looked like basically like Sam Elliott. He was like, had this long hair and the big bushy mustache kind of thing. Good looking guy. He was actually an actor. But
you've never met him?
Never met him. So yeah, so I became Christopher Blake Rausch. And then throughout the years, I was like, because of my sister situation, like Rausch, I'm not a Rausch. I'm not that gene. I didn't really care about genealogy and all that other shit, family trees, whatever. Burn the tree down. I don't care about the tree. I'm going this way. But now as I've gotten older, it's kind of looking back and like, so I signed. My wife got me a 23andMe because she was really curious. She wanted me to find my biological family, but I'm like, I don't want to go back and find my biological family. If they never knew that he was promiscuous, they don't know that I exist, and I don't want to become knocking on. And he's passed away. I got his birth certificate or death certificate. He passed away in 1993 from stomach cancer that metastasized. Oh, man. Died at the age of 57. Interestingly enough, my wife's dad died at 57 too. She had a psychic reading where his name came up in the psychic reading that her dad was present. So it was like they were chummy. I don't know. Weird shit.
That is some weird shit.
Yeah, so Christopher Blake Rausch. That's how I got my name. And I've toyed around with changing it over the years, but I'm like, it's a label.
Yeah.
That's not who I am.
Again, it's like the gremlin. At first you see it and you're like, that person is poor or has bad taste. But then the next time you see him, you're like, oh, that's Scotty. You look past that. So your name, I think, is similar. There is stuff into a name where people can be judgmental, but our people, after they know you, then they know you. And like my mom told me before, you really know somebody if you know their heart.
Yeah.
And so I've thought about that, and then I kind of argue with it in my head sometimes. But I think it is kind of true. She has a point there. So if you know somebody's intentions, if you know somebody's, and I think if you know their heart, then you'll at least have a good guess on what their intentions are. You never can tell, but I have had a lot of situations dealing with people where I knew their intent. I knew what they were trying to do, and I still was like, you know what, it's okay. Benefit of the doubt. Here, create this situation where they could take advantage, but they won't do that because I want to be nice and I want to help people out, and boom, but it's a learning lesson. Now, is it going to stop me? No, because that's who I am. I do stupid shit. I help people out, and I don't have to. I get to.
Yes.
And that in my mind is an important little difference of the words that you say that make a big impact. I don't have to. I get to.
So perfect.
And it just gives you that liberation where you're like, so because if you ever feel like you're in a box, you're like, fuck this. I don't want to be in a box. I don't want to be stifled. I don't want to be stagnating. You do not have control over me. I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do, and screw you if you think otherwise. And so it's not, anyway, so by getting to, you are not your own prisoner. You are your own savior. So.
Yes, sir.
So anyway.
And to your point about the gremlin, because you mentioned it a few times.
Yes.
What's that gremlin worth now?
Oh, good point.
See, gremlin may be seen as something when it starts out, but over time it ages and now it becomes unique. So now 1972 gremlin is worth a lot because it's
good
unique.
Point.
Boom.
For those of you, I'm not sure if we had the conversation. I think we had this conversation off camera, but we were talking about people judging, and basically, if somebody comes to your house and they pull up in a 1972 Gremlin, you're gonna look out there for the first time and you're gonna judge. You're gonna say, "Well, that person is poor, or that person has bad taste, or that person has, I don't know, whatever, some kind of negative thing." Because let's face it, 1972 Gremlins are not the most beautiful car out there, and so, but you get to know that person, and then the next day they show up, you'll see the Gremlin, but your judgments kind of fly away because it doesn't matter. And you say, "Oh, there's Scotty," or whoever's driving, and that's the point. So in a name and anything else, it matters at first for a second, but then it doesn't. So whatever that's worth. If that's something, if the shoe fits, wear it. If not, whatever. But is there? I think we've covered some pretty good ground, man.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Quite a bit. Just the surface.
Yeah, and I think we set it up. I think we teed it up for another conversation down the road.
Absolutely.
As well.
Anytime. I would love to come back, man. It's been a great conversation with you, man.
Very cool. All right. Well, again, so you've mentioned Christopher Blake Rausch, or YouTube / the Christopher Rausch.
YouTube.com, the Christopher Rausch, or www.christopherrausch.com. Best place. Just go there, all the social media there. Connect with me on Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse.
What's your Instagram?
Instagram is at Christopher Rausch.
Okay.
Sometimes I brand it. I've gotten kind of confused now because I've started branding No Excuses Coach. So, but yeah, Christopher. If you just Google Christopher Rausch, I come up. Me and a doctor.
Okay, perfect.
Perfect.
Doctor Christopher Rausch.
Dr. Dr. Feelgood. I used to be called that. But I was dealing drugs. Not really. I'm just kidding.
Well, now you're dealing positivity.
Oh yeah.
Positivity from negativity.
Possibility.
I like it's spin, right? See positive and negative. But anyway, for all of you guys that tuned in, thank you so much for listening to the podcast. And if you have a minute, go check out Christopher Rausch. He's got a unique style. He definitely has a unique story, as you've heard. And we can all glean insights from his experience. So, again, thank you, Christopher Rausch, for appearing on the show. You were good. You were great.
I love it. No, it was a great conversation, man. You asked great questions, and I really appreciate being here.
Awesome. All right, cool. Well, until the next time, all of you people in podcast land, see you later, alligator.